Welcome to Critical Role Demystified. I'm Mike Christensen, and this is the series where I break down the lessons we can learn, as GMs and as players, from episodes of Critical Role. Today we're tackling episode 70, Trust. Now over the past couple of months I've been doing a video blitz, and then I would accidentally take like a week or two off for real life stuff. So in all the recent chaos, I completely forgot to mention that we hit 50,000 subscribers. I truly cannot believe I didn't say anything about it. It happened like a month ago. I totally missed mentioning that on the actual channel, which is truly wild. And honestly, thank you so much for watching and subscribing. I really appreciate it. Over the past couple of months, it's actually felt not only possible for me to keep making this my full-time job, but also like I'm not completely insane for trying. And that is entirely thanks to your support. Now, without further ado, let's get into the game. When the session begins, the party is in the war room with Secret Assume, who has just revealed himself to be the Green Dragon Raishan in disguise. And as she made clear at the end of the last episode, she holds a lot of the cards, basically guaranteeing a captive audience. She's more powerful than them, smarter than them, she knows all their secrets, and most importantly, they share the same goal. Raishan wants to form an allegiance to kill Thordak, the Cinder King. So as the session opens, the party asks what her motives are. Why is she here, and why does she want Thordak dead? And she tells them her story. A few decades ago, she battled Thordak, and the fight lasted for days. They're both ancient dragons, after all. But during the fight, Thordak noticed Raishan's disease. She provides a visual aid for this by revealing a disease in her scales, a sickly green infection that pulses with her heartbeat. Several decades before her fight with Thordak, Raishan had infiltrated and toppled a temple of Melora, which was being built by a high druid for her roving peons, Raishan's words. She ate all the acolytes and killed the druid on her altar. But the druid used her final moments to inflict a powerful disease on Raishan, and she's been looking for the cure ever since. Thordak recognized Raishan's affliction and said he could cure it, and Raishan says she knows when someone is lying. Thordak wasn't lying. He knows how to cure her. They made an agreement for Raishan to serve him in exchange for the cure, but then Thordak was sealed in the elemental plane of fire by Allura and Kima and their friends. Raishan was able to get into the fire plane and pay him a visit, but he wouldn't give up the cure until he was free. So she set a plan in motion.
I proposed the conclave. I assembled the others. I negotiated the agreements. I corrupted the binding stone. I prepared the Pyre gate. I did everything!
Raishan wanted to wait for the celestial solstice, but Thordak was losing his mind thanks to the soul anchor bound to him, corrupting him. She didn't want to wait much longer and risk him forgetting their deal, or forgetting the cure itself, so she used Winter's Crest instead, the same time of year the Briarwoods were planning to perform their ritual. Winter's Crest and solstices are good times of year for extraplanar magic, it seems. Anyway, Raishan performed the ritual, and Vox Machina knows the next part. Thordak broke free, tore through Pyre, they conquered Amon, Western and Draconia, they got everything they wanted, the Chroma Conclave won, and went their separate ways. But still, Thordak would not give Raishan the cure. Instead, he just laughs at her, enjoying her suffering and her desperation. So that's why she's here to meet with Vox Machina. She wants to watch Thordak die, then bring his spirit back and pull the secret out of him, and then completely destroy him. But Keyleth tells Raishan they're gonna kill Thordak, don't worry about that. But they're gonna kill her first, because she destroyed a quarter of Keyleth's civilization. Judging by the faces of the rest of the cast, Vex seems uneasy about Keyleth's outburst, wondering how Raishan is going to react, but everyone else seems to be just watching to see how Raishan will respond to Keyleth's very righteous anger.
I know what you are. You are a parasite. You walk around calling yourself a magnificent ancient dragon. You are nothing more than a leech. You consumed the energy of my people for years. And we're supposed to just trust you?
Child, your anger is misplaced.
Call me child one more goddamn time!
I move behind Keyleth.
I love that moment of support from Travis/Grog. I think a lot of us would find it perfectly natural to step in between Keyleth and Raishan at that point, to make sure that she doesn't do anything too rash, and get them into a situation they can't get themselves out of. However, Grog instead moves behind her. He's moving out of the way, in case she fires off a spell or something at Raishan. And that's his way of essentially giving Keyleth the green light, if that's what she wants to do. As we'll soon see, the party generally doesn't want to fight Raishan right here and right now, but Grog is, literally, backing up Keyleth right now. If things jump off, he's not going to be in her way. He has her back. Pun intended. And to be fair, Raishan has given Keyleth a ton of reasons to want her dead.
I did not slay a single one of your people.
No.
Thordak's release destroyed the top of that
Which
mountain.
you did! You unleashed the mad dog, you bitch! This is your fucking fault! He's just a mad king. As you said so yourself, you're the master planner!
That's maybe my favorite line from this episode. I know a lot of people love it when she says, "Call me child one more goddamn time." I get it. I also like that quote when it was originally in Hamilton.
Your wife needs you alive, son. I need you alive. Call me son one more time!
But quite frankly, I love it when Keyleth points out that Raishan literally stood in front of them and told them that she's directly responsible for all the worst parts of the Chroma Conclave's attacks. She brought the dragons together and negotiated the terms for how they would divide up their territory, which means she's responsible for Brimsight's actions in Amon in the pre-stream game, and she's responsible for the assault on Amon in the beginning of the Chroma Conclave arc, and for the attacks on Westron and Draconia. This also means she's responsible for everything Umbrasyl did in Westron, and for Vorogall claiming Draconia and killing Tiberius. Keyleth already put some blame at Raishan's feet for the deaths in Pyre, since she's the one who broke Thordak out of the fire plane. But now we also know that this wasn't the Conclave's plan or Thordak's plan. Raishan wasn't an unwitting pawn or anything like that. The whole thing was her idea. And just to make things worse, Raishan's backstory includes her tearing down a temple to Melora, the goddess of nature, the one god Keyleth has really shown any remote interest in, and certainly the one whose domain is closest to Keyleth's heart. And the temple was specifically being built by druids, so Raishan has killed even more people who are essentially Keyleth's kin. Or, if they're not Ashari, at the very least they could be considered Keyleth's counterparts or her colleagues. And to literally add insult to injury, Raishan called the druids' followers roving peons. And here's the thing. Surely Matt must know what he's doing, right? It seems like he's essentially trying to create the most hateable villain Vox Machina has faced so far. You can argue about whether or not he's succeeded or if she still pales in comparison to how despicable the Briarwoods were, but the very fact that I think we could even try to have that debate means Raishan's actions were pretty heinous. But of course, that's what makes this a challenge. Imagine if Raishan had come to them and said, "No, actually, I didn't have anything to do with all that. I know you saw me obliterate the entire Taldori Council, but I was just doing that under duress. I was being blackmailed. I know you thought that I opened the gate to free Thordak, but actually, I was trying to close it. It's just a huge misunderstanding. I've been hiding from Thordak this entire time. That's why nobody's been able to find me. I've been trying to find my way here to tell you that I want your help." I mean, obviously in that scenario, the party wouldn't believe Raishan, no matter how many insight checks they rolled, but I think we could all understand that that's the most obvious, logical move, right? Do you want a bad guy to join the good guy team? Then you either make it clear that they weren't actually that bad, or you make them extremely apologetic. We literally just saw that with Kynan in the last session. Kynan was immediately talking about how he realized he was mixed up and how he'd done awful things, and that gives the players an opening to see how messed up he is and potentially offer him some forgiveness. But that is not what Raishan does. She lays out all of her crimes, even telling Vox Machina about some new ones that they didn't even know about. And you can absolutely make the case that this is just how an ancient dragon would behave. Raishan is so old and so devoid of humanity that it potentially didn't even occur to her that Vox Machina would react negatively to those statements, because she just didn't even consider their feelings. Or maybe she's so tied up in her own anger toward Thordak, she's not even aware of how humans would respond to that news. She's not even considering the impact her words have on other people. I guess we've all been there. But I actually think the in-character motivation doesn't matter, because what I think is so much more interesting is the moral dilemma Matt is putting in front of his players. He's not just giving them an opportunity to team up with a dangerous monster like we had with Clarota, because Clarota wasn't directly responsible for what had happened to Kima's team, or any of Kavarn's experiments, or his war machine, or any personal harm that had come to Vox Machina or any of their loved ones. But this time, Raishan has just given her personal resume, and it's literally full of genocide, a lot of which directly impacted the party. And now Matt is offering his players a choice. Are you going to team up with her to take on the remaining dragons? And this is such a brilliant curveball for the final act of the Chroma Conclave storyline. First of all, now instead of having to track down 2 more dragons before fighting Thordak, they only have to track 1 down and kill 1, the White Dragon, Vorogall. And that's especially helpful because the party was repeatedly told that once they killed another dragon, that would kick off the war with Thordak and his allies. But now, even if that war does start once they kill Vorogall, they don't have 1 more dragon to find and kill before they can kill Thordak, because they're theoretically going to be working with that dragon. Additionally, getting another ally working with the party who knows more of Thordak's secrets can help accelerate the timeline and help the party build some momentum toward the finale of the storyline. But also, even just in the short term, now Matt has changed the dramatic question behind the White Dragon fight. No longer is the question just, are you going to be able to ambush Vorogall the way you ambushed Umbrasyl? Now the question is, are you going to take down another dragon while teaming up with maybe the most evil dragon in the Conclave? Can you trust her? So now it's time for the party to ask their questions and figure out what they're going to do. Percy jumps in, but he's not trying to undercut Keyleth or walk back any of her anger. Instead, he just helps make her point. it seems like Raishan needs them a lot more than they need her. They ask some logistical questions like where exactly is the real seeker Assume, and she says he's in Amon, working with the Clasp. She had taken on a different alter ego and worked alongside him and picked up a lot of information, so everything she told them as Assume was true about what Assume has been doing so far. Also, I wonder if the real seeker Assume has those acid scars across his face. Part of me always wondered if maybe Raishan gave herself some nasty scars so she wouldn't have to mimic all of his complex tattoos when she took his form. Probably not. I don't think that's how the magic works. I'm sure she doesn't need to concentrate on the tattoos specifically. It's just you cast a spell and you get the same tattoos as him, but I know it's kind of a fun headcanon to imagine her saying, I don't want to worry about all those tattoos, I'm just gonna burn half his face off. He probably actually does have the scar, but I just think it would be funny. Anyway, we also learned that Raishan has to continuously check in with Thordak, reporting in and making it seem as if she's still sweeping Tal'Dorei, searching for the party. She tells them that Thordak's presence, enhanced by the power of the soul anchor bound to his chest, is literally creating a volcano underneath Amon. It'll take years and years for it to manifest properly, but the process has already begun. And she tells them her retirement plan. Once they take down Thordak, she'll round up her network of spies and followers and leave Tal'Dorei. She'll find someplace she can settle down, and she'll just keep stealing enough to survive, and she won't bother any of them. The party agrees to work with her to kill the White Dragon, and then they'll make a proper deal to kill Thordak, but there's no sense in discussing those terms now, since they don't trust her. Getting her help killing Vorgal will be a show of good faith, and that will open negotiations for the Thordak battle. But Keyleth makes it clear, once we're done with Thordak, she's not going to let Raishan ride off into the sunset. She's going to kill Raishan even if she has to die doing it. And once again, Percy backs her up.
You have no idea what I'm capable of. No matter what malady festers within me.
Oh, we know.
This is your home, right, Percival?
It is.
It would be a shame for it to suddenly no longer exist.
Can we please just fucking kill her now?
I am not Keyleth. Your threats... they won't bend me, because I believe you. I believe that you would rend this entire city asunder. That's why I'm at the table. I am conscious of where we are. I'm conscious of who you are, and I'm conscious of what you need. I'm just trying to make sure that everybody's clear that the minute that red dragon dies, all bets are off. You know it as well as I do. And you should be wary, because only one side of this table is underestimating the other.
Now Vox Machina talks it over, to figure out all the reasons they have to mistrust Raishan. She's clearly duplicitous and dangerous, but in her defense, she could have disrupted the dome when Vorgal flew by, revealing their location and causing the destruction of Whitestone. She could have brought Vorgal and Thordak here instead of putting this meeting together. Hell, even if she was planning to bring Thordak to Draconia and ambush Vox Machina when they went to go kill Vorgal, they could have just done that. She didn't need to reveal herself here. They honestly can't figure out a good reason for why she's here besides the fact that she's being truthful. She wants to kill Thordak, and she needs their help. But of course, in the past, we've talked about the transitive properties of being a badass and how seductive it is to D&D players. And here we're seeing it in action once again. Raishan says she can't take Thordak alone, and she needs their help. Ergo, Vox Machina has it in their heads that they can take Raishan because she's weaker than Thordak, and they're feeling a bit more solid in their dragging and slaying abilities these days. So, despite Percy saying they're not underestimating Raishan, Vax, Scanlan, and obviously Keyleth are all seriously considering just trying to kill her right now.
I still don't really know why we need her to begin with.
I want
think we're
something...
powerful enough. Why don't we just kill her now?
Honestly, because it would damage the castle.
Because it would, damn it,
No, don't provoke.
What is that?
She's
What is
really...
that move? Don't do that.
It would damage mine.
You inviting?
And there are
I'm
civilians.
saying the choice is yours.
Don't do
Either
it.
we work together, or you all fall.
Come on.
One dragon, then we talk.
Even my simple mind sees the advantages here.
Keyleth, all we're debating is the order in which they die.
She was first on my list.
I don't recommend lists.
Again, it's not just Keyleth. Scanlan is strongly considering it as well, and Vax says they probably could kill her, but she'll just destroy everyone and everything she can to punish them for it. Percy also seems to think they could kill her if it came to that, but he points out that she could use her last action to give away their position and effectively draw Thordak and his army toward Whitestone, dooming his people. The party also tries to keep Keyleth from mentioning their vestiges, but Raishan reminds them, You already told me about them. I know everything. Now, once again, Raishan has only one condition. After they kill Thordak, she gets to talk to Thordak's corpse. Then they can try to kill her, whatever, she's not too worried about that. And she wants them to agree to this term now before the Vorogol fight. But Vox Machina digs their heels in. No, this is a gesture of good faith, before we agree to come to the table for another negotiation. And she relents and gives another stipulation instead. Just don't tell anybody about me. Keep my secrets. If anyone comes sniffing around Secret Assume, she'll be forced to conclude that they're onto her, and she'll kill them. They all reluctantly agree that Raishan is definitely hiding something big and important from them, but she's probably not overtly lying about anything she's told them so far.
I agree. Hands?
What are we agreeing on?
I don't know.
To
Just
fight
say you agree
with
with him.
Raishan.
I'm in this far.
You don't need our votes. It's
We
already
don't need to
decided.
be
You're abstaining.
Yes.
I really wish you would vote.
You really need
It's
to
very-
vote.
your
Voting is
vote matters.
important.
Is voting this time important, particularly?
Yeah, this
Jump
time
on the
it's
carpet
really
and go
important.
kill her anyway.
Yeah.
What can't I? If I don't vote, won't someone else just vote for me?
No,
or-
you actually sway the vote in greater ways than you can possibly imagine. Very important.
I don't even know how. Is it easy to find out?
I'm sure the internet has all your answers.
I should just go online and find out how to register.
Register to vote.
Okay.
Look, it's never an easy choice, but you have to fall down on one side or the other, Scanlan.
Preferably
it's-
one that doesn't rely on hate as a message. Probably.
Okay, we've gone far enough off the track. Okay, reeling it back.
All right, let's kill a dragon and
Sorry.
feel that burn.
This episode originally aired in October 2016. I really wasn't expecting to discuss this episode right after yet another election sent Donald Trump to the White House, although in fairness, that's because I figured he'd be in jail by now, because of all the crimes he did. But okay, let's talk about democracy. In D&D, I mean, obviously. Because clearly the majority of these players voted to work with Raishan, and Scanlan and Keyleth were not on board with that. But unless your group has a really specific and structured system in place, just settling on a majority isn't always enough. Sometimes it is. Sometimes it's perfectly reasonable for you to say, we've got a consensus, this helped us make the decision, so we're going to go with whichever position had the most votes. However, this isn't just a debate about which mission they'll go on, or which dungeon passageway to go down, or even which NPC to trust. This is a debate over whether they're going to try to work with a monster, or try to get into an epic fight right here and right now. And so Travis didn't call for a vote to help make the decision. He essentially wants to know where everyone stands. Rather than arguing in circles, they need to know which way everyone is leaning. This is like the vote at the beginning of 12 Angry Men. Let's see where everyone stands, and if anybody still has any specific concerns, we can talk to them and hear them out and see what we need to say to get them on board. But essentially, Travis wants a unanimous consensus. He knows they're essentially asking Keyleth to forestall her vengeance, and he doesn't take that decision lightly. Earlier in this scene, he said exactly this to Keyleth. He told her that he knew that they were asking the impossible, but they had to be patient right now. And the fact that Grog was the one saying it kind of helped Keyleth realize just how much she'd been consumed by her anger, if Grog is preaching patience. But I do think, when you've got a decision this important and dissent this extreme, it's not just enough to say, okay, we voted, Keyleth, you're outvoted, you have to set aside your hatred for Raishan. She has to be a willing participant. Even if she's doing so reluctantly, it still has to be unanimous. This actually reminds me of one of my first 5th edition campaigns. The party was divided about some course of action, some mission they were about to go on, and the bard was not on board. I don't remember all the details, unfortunately, this was 9 years ago, but that's mainly because the solution that they had was so much worse than the problem had been. Because when the rest of the party was all on the same page except for the bard, the other players just rolled persuasion to say that they convinced him. Now, obviously, I think if you've watched my videos, you can guess that I feel it was an absolute travesty that me from the past allowed that to happen in that moment. We had come from 4th edition where the persuasion equivalent was called diplomacy, so it wasn't nearly as tempting to roll that skill against your fellow players. But yeah, at the time I just sat there and watched as the bard player got really frustrated when the other players rolled persuasion, rolled well enough, and declared that he had to agree with them, he had to agree with their plan because they'd rolled so well. And I think by the next session, I talked to all the players and basically told them this kind of thing was not going to fly anymore. Rolling skills against each other had to be adjudicated by me, and there were some rolls, such as persuasion, that I just wasn't going to allow them to roll anymore on other player characters. And that was not the only issue with that campaign, there was a lot going on at that time, but this was just one of the issues we had. But it is something that seems so obvious to me now, but at the time, I didn't realize the consequences of allowing players to roll like that until I saw them do it. I wasn't the GM you see before you, who never makes mistakes and always makes every call exactly right in the moment. This is a lesson I had to learn the hard way. But I really do wish that, at the time, I'd seen this moment from Critical Role. Or rather, I wish my players had seen this moment from Critical Role. Actually, I wish my players had seen this video of me talking about this moment from Critical Role. But I wish we'd known that for the really important stuff, it's not just enough to land on a majority vote. You need to get buy-in from everybody. Now, you know your group better than I do, so you're going to have to find that line for yourself. This isn't the last vote in this Vox Machina episode, so we'll talk more about that later in this episode. But considering how this is essentially a mini Keyleth storyline, all about whether or not you can set aside vengeance to work with a monster to get rid of the big villain, I think waiting for a unanimous vote was a fantastic move from Grog. Also, while we're on the subject of how important it is for everybody to vote, come on, I don't even need to say it, do I? We can just leave this one unsaid. We're all thinking the same thing about how important it is for everybody to vote, because abstaining doesn't actually get you what you want, and in fact just makes things worse for everyone, so it's important to actually make your voice heard. Okay, good. I don't have to say it. I was worried this video was going to get political. So, now that Vox Machina has agreed to work with Raishan, she wants to talk about their plan to fight the White Dragon. But they say, you know what? Tensions are high, let's take a break. Meet us in the morning, get ready to head to Draconia for the fight. Then, Assume excuses himself, and everyone else heads down to the real war room next to the ziggurat, where they can't be magically observed with scrying spells. They make some rolls to figure out what they know about Raishan's disease, and they're able to identify it as a soul curse. Basically, the druid Raishan killed burned their own soul away and extinguished any chance they'd have to see an afterlife in order to get vengeance on Raishan. That kind of feels like a metaphor for vengeance, come to think of it. Anyway, Matt says they have no idea how to cure a soul curse. I think that's a wise decision. In my opinion, your world should include some curses that can't be cured by Remove Curse or Greater Restoration. I don't think those are bad spells necessarily, but I don't think that they should be cure-alls. Sometimes it is more satisfying to have these big, powerful magical spells and effects that we get from folklore and mythology that are more powerful than the spells that you have access to. So now they discuss their plan for the White Dragon fight. When they get to Draconia, they're going to use the Gate Scroll to summon Yank, the Garistro Dreamin from the Abyss, who has the Spire of Conflux in his stomach. That's the vestige that's meant for Keyleth. Then that beast can fight the White Dragon. That's 2 birds with 1 stone. Hopefully one of these monsters will kill the other, and then Vox Machina can rush in and mop up the monster that is left standing. Now this is funny because we've talked recently about how these vestige missions are ideally designed in such a way to provide emotional catharsis for the player character who will get that vestige. Grog had to fight his evil uncle Kebdak to earn the Titanstone Knuckles. Vex had to be confronted by her own sinister self-talk before she could earn the Fenthras bow. Percy had to put down Ripley, his rival gunsmith and his evil doppelganger, in order to get the cloak, Cabal's Ruin. Vax had to come face to face with Kynan, the idealistic young man who he spurned, in order to get his hands on his new dagger, Whisper. And I wonder if Matt might have had a similar challenge in mind for Keyleth. Maybe she would have gone on some emotional journey in the Abyss in order to reach Yank. We don't know. But she and Vex have figured out a clever workaround where they can use one of their resources and potentially skip that mission entirely and still get the reward. And I can't imagine Matt is pissed about that for a few reasons. First, he's the one who gave them the Gate Scroll. Maybe he had this in mind, or maybe not, but it does seem like he's perfectly happy to let his players use their resources to solve problems, especially when they're very precious, one-use resources like this. Second, this means they're not going to have to go on a full mission into the Abyss, which means the storyline will wrap up sooner, something Matt has been pushing for in a few ways throughout recent sessions. And third, Keyleth absolutely has some other emotional trauma going on, so I doubt Matt feels like they're missing out on much by not going on this quest into the Abyss. However, Matt's players always want a sure thing. They want to know exactly what they're in for, so they want to research what a Garistro is. And Scanlan in particular points out that this spell will only work if they know the Yank's true name. So they're trying to figure out how to make sure that they know what Yank's true name is. So as part of their research, they keep asking not just what a Garistro is, but if anybody has specifically heard of a Garistro named Yank. First they ask Pike, but she doesn't know anything about him. Vex and Percy check the library and find some illustrations of demons, including art of the Garistro. Meanwhile, Scanlan and Grog go to talk to Keeper Yennon, and he knows a little bit more about what Garistros are. Not much, but just enough to know that they have powerful fists. Phrasing. So they're really good at physical attacks. Phrasing? No. And I really like that Matt divided up the lore between these two groups. Neither group got a ton of information, so Matt isn't spoiling any of his surprises yet, but what little lore they do have, he divided between the two parties, so everybody feels like they got something done. It's a little thing, but I think it really helps make sure that neither group feels like their efforts were wasted. That being said, Scanlan and Grog do try to guilt Yennon into doing more research and finding out more information, and it just gets weird and awkward for everybody. It's very silly. However, Vax also has someone else he can ask about Yank. The Raven Queen. He goes to his new temple and prays to her, asking for anything they need to know about a fiend named Yank. He feels a shiver that is also strangely comforting, and then he hears her voice. She tells him that his friends have already found some answers, but she also adds, "The path to the Sphinx gave you all you need." And even though he talks to the other players about this, both in and out of the game, they don't really know what she means. They think she's just being cryptic. But actually, maybe it's just because I've watched a ton of episodes of Critical Role, so I feel like I understand Matt Mercer really well, but I think her meaning was pretty straightforward. She's saying that the Sphinx who told them about the Spire of Conflux told you The Garistro's name is Yank. You got all the information you need. His name is Yank. You're good. Now, I don't say this to shame Matt's players. They're looking for a clear answer, and Matt doesn't feel like the gods should give clear answers because it's not how he imagines the relationship with the divine should work. And honestly, I'm pretty on the fence about the idea that Vax can just pray to his god and get a clear answer like this. A cleric like Pike would have had to cast a spell to get an answer like that. And yeah, Vax is the champion of the Raven Queen, so that's why it works, but just as general advice, if your player is just a worshipper of a god, I don't recommend allowing prayer to have such a strong, explicit result, especially if there's a cleric or a paladin in the party, and their relationship with their god doesn't work the same way. And to be clear, I do this as someone who absolutely does what Matt does the same thing in my own games. When we're actually playing the game and a player character prays to a divine power, I just can't help myself. I'll often have that supernatural power intervene in some way, either with a cryptic message or with some other divine boon. And if I'm running the game consistently for all my players, then I don't think that's a problem. For example, in my Curse of Strahd game, both the cleric and the paladin are able to at least get obscure moments of contact with their divine patrons without casting the requisite spells. But I'm a lot less wild about that when it's a game like this, where the cleric clearly doesn't have that same ability to just sit and chat with their god as frequently as Vax can. And again, special circumstances, I don't think Matt is necessarily making a mistake when it comes to his group and this campaign specifically. But I do think that if we try to apply this approach to our own games, we need to take a more delicate touch. And speaking of being delicate, Vax gives Keyleth his Cloak of Displacement. Seeing her get knocked unconscious really shook him, since that's never happened before. And besides, he needs to unattune to something to make room for Whisper. Percy goes to find Grog and asks him for the guns, but before he meets up with him, Sam jumps in, and as Scanlan, he asks Grog for a pistol and some rounds of ammo. So Scanlan has secretly armed himself before Percy arrives. That's obviously metagaming on Sam's part, but it's also kind of a joke, I think. Anyway, Sam has built up a lot of trust with this group, so it's not really an issue for them. Then Percy shows up and asks for the guns, and they negotiate for a bit, but finally Grog agrees to hand over all of the guns in exchange for receiving a title from Percy.
Grand Poobah de Doink of all of this and that.
Grand Poobah de Doink of all
of this and that. Of all of this and that.
That sounds amazing.
It comes with no money and no land, but it is a title.
This is a great day.
It is.
It is, right?
Yes.
Man, I just keep coming up in the world. I just keep coming up. Just against all the odds.
You
I feel like an
started out
Eminem
with
song in
nothing,
the background right now.
And now you're here.
8 Mile, bitches. Let's go inside.
Percy looks over the guns and he gets a magic item card for Animus, and we watch Taliesin have a whole range of reactions. It's quite the magic item, as we'll see when he takes it for a spin. Pun intended, because you spin the chambers of a revolver, you take it for a spin. Never mind, I thought it was funny. Also, as Vax is asking the others what they think about the message from the Raven Queen, they mention the path to the Sphinx, and they're not sure which Sphinx. It's Kamal Diori. It's the one who told them about the vestiges. The Gristro is named Yank. But anyway, because they're thinking about both Sphinxes, someone mentions the ziggurat beneath Vasselheim and how it was apparently connected to the ziggurat beneath Whitestone since they were both ancient temples of Ioun. And Marisha just vanishes into her notes for, honestly, a while, looking over her old notes about the ziggurats. The party meets up to discuss logistics, and speaking of metagaming, this is specifically a scene that I referenced in my metagaming video. I didn't talk about it specifically, but I was thinking about this as I listed a very similar fictional example. I talked about how it's good metagaming to bring your character into a scene that they're not a part of, if the other players want you there for it. And I was picturing this scene where Percy is going through the guns, and Vax joins him, and then, essentially one by one, the party members basically join the discussion.
Oh, you should take a look at this. And I just point at the open book with the picture. Look what we have. That is our friend.
Oh, is that Yank?
So
Well,
the
it's
book
one of
says.
Yank's brethren.
Did you follow me down here? I said I didn't fucking want to.
Well, obviously Keel is there, so I figured I was too.
Hell.
I thought you were working kind of in the middle of.
My door's open.
Take a level in the road.
I'm in my thing, but it's open, and I've already sent people to
I
send.
said hi, Percy.
Yeah.
It's not my fault no one notices I'm around.
Do we even know how to use the gate scroll exactly? Scanlan has to use it, right?
Yeah, the little guy could pull it off.
It's gonna have to be either Scanlan or me, but.
Hey guys,
Scanlan, hey!
door was open. Just thought I'd come in. Grog's right outside in the hall.
Grog!
Hi, guys.
Oh!
Grog! Come on in.
I just love that moment a lot, where the players essentially slowly realize that this should functionally be a team meeting, and so they just metagame a little bit so everyone can be there, because this conversation is kind of important. They talk about the logistics of their plan, and Scanlan points out that he could potentially fail to cast the spell since Gate is a higher level spell than he's capable of casting. They ask Allura and Kima to stop by. After all, they know Kima wanted to join them on a dragon hunt, and maybe Allura can cast Gate more successfully than Scanlan. However, they also won't tell Allura and Kima that Raishan is joining them for the mission, since Raishan will be in disguise. Before the ladies arrive, the party revisits the option of killing Raishan after the White Dragon fight, just in case she's still planning to betray them before the Thordak fight. This is something they discussed at the Ziggurat, and they'd all pretty much been on the same page. Once the White Dragon is dead, we turn on Raishan and kill her right there in the snow. However, now that they're discussing logistics, they realize this plan has some pretty serious flaws. First of all, she has already told them that she plans to hang back and spend as little energy as possible, presumably casting spells from afar, rather than mixing it up in melee and taking any damage. So while she might be down some magical resources, they'd potentially be facing a full bag of hit points, whereas Vox Machina probably won't be so lucky. And second, even if they did try to maneuver Raishan into a position where they could ambush her, like a cave small enough to prevent her from transforming into a dragon, Raishan can detect lies, so any effort at subterfuge is pretty much doomed to fail. So they begrudgingly admit to the plan. Bring her to Draconia as an ally, and then don't try to kill her. Percy also shares his plan for the new guns. Create a militia of rifle wielders to protect the castle. They wouldn't carry guns in town, only within the castle walls, and their purpose would be to protect Whitestone against a dragon attack. He probably feels like, look, if the genie's out of the bottle, we gotta get proactive about it. He sends Vax to go recruit Kynan because he's one of the few people in Exandria who knows his way around guns, thanks to his time spent with Ripley. As Vax leaves, Allura and Kima arrive. They ask her about the spell scroll, and she just wants to copy it into her spellbook. Then, once she's high enough level to cast the spell, it would be part of her arsenal, and she expects to hit that level of prowess in a couple of years. And I love this from Matt. First of all, he draws a clear line. Allura cannot cast 9th level spells. This is important because I think the party is so used to the idea that Allura is higher level than them, because she was a powerful NPC when they first met her, that they haven't really fully internalized the idea that she doesn't actually have all that much more power than them anymore. If she is still higher level than the party, it's not by much. And that brings me to the second point Matt makes in this scene. Allura isn't leveling up very quickly. She expects to be able to cast 9th level spells in a few years. Right now, Vox Machina is averaging about a level per week. Now, after the Chroma Conclave, things might slow down, and they're not going to be able to cast 9th level spells when they encounter Thordak. But Matt is still making it clear that the NPCs are not your parachutes anymore. They don't have this incredible depth of powers that are completely inaccessible to you. You are rapidly approaching the point where you're going to be more powerful than them, and when that happens, you will be among the most powerful beings on the planet. This is a really important thing to establish, especially for what is a pretty high magic campaign. I'm still planning on making a video diving into all the potential nuances of having spellcasting NPC allies, but whenever I do get around to making that video, I'm definitely going to talk about how important it is to make sure your spellcasting allies have some limits on their power to help the party. And this is a pretty important limit. And speaking of limits, Allura shares another one. She's working on securing the dome with Gilmore. So the party seems to realize that her current task is pretty important and it might not be worth the risk to pull her away from it. So they do not recruit her for the White Dragon fight after all. However, Scanlan does tell Allura about Tiberius' death, and Allura clearly doesn't quite know how to react. She acknowledges this is the risk in their line of work, but she's also sad to hear the news, and she excuses herself. However, Kima is ready to tangle, so Vex recruits her for the fight against the White Dragon. And as soon as Kima leaves, Keyleth points out that they just invited her on a mission where she doesn't have all the info. In fact, she's missing a pretty key piece of information. And when Kima does discover that Raishan is among the allies, as she inevitably will, and she learns Vox Machina was keeping it a secret, she's going to be furious with them for not telling her.
Look, we don't have to tell her. As soon as we hit Raishan, she'll reveal herself anyway. That was our agreement, not tell, right?
But then what happens when Kima goes, did you guys know?
Yes.
Yeah, she didn't ask.
Paints us as pretty shady folk.
These are the people we need to trust us. They're our allies.
She has kept secrets from us, and we have a perfectly legitimate reason for not telling.
That was also
We're protecting her.
ago.
No, we have that was fine. We still have a perfectly reasonable reason for not telling anyone, which is that if we tell people, the city gets destroyed.
And they get destroyed.
You are welcome to tell her, and then we have to deal with the city being
Plus,
destroyed.
Kima is a total bash brother, and if she gets to find out she gets to kill 2 dragons instead of 1, I don't think she's going to be upset.
I don't know, we're putting her in a lot of danger.
Yes, we are.
As opposed to staying here.
And we were aware and we could have told her. She's going to be angry at not telling her the full parameters.
She will.
Yeah, did you see her though? She's like sweaty. She's like working on the outside
This
of
is
houses.
not someone we want to lose our trust.
No,
If we
but
leave
she's
her
like
here,
doing
she could
stucco
help.
in a
She
field.
could help protect the city.
Look,
she could go under siege.
She's a soldier. They're
I
used to
guess-
not being told things.
No, she is not a soldier in our manifested army. She is our friend and ally. There is a difference right now. This is a different duty and relationship.
I feel like I got us into this, and I'm really sorry about that.
Percy says, look, if it makes you feel better, we can just tell her that there are things we can't tell her so she knows there's something she's not in the loop on, but that we have a good reason for not telling her. But Keyleth brings up a great counterpoint. Do you think Kima will let it go at that? She's the most relentless person they know. She'll get the secret out of them. And let's be fair, Vox Machina is not exactly great at holding water anyway. Keyleth basically lays it down where she stands. They can either disinvite Kima or tell her the truth now. Because as far as Keyleth is concerned, the worst case scenario is Kima finding out on her own once they're in Draconia, because that's what will feel like a betrayal of her trust. And Scanlan agrees. As it stands, Kima has just signed up for more danger than she expected, and he doesn't feel good about that. Percy's fine with uninviting her if that's what the group agrees on, because he feels the secret is more important. After all, they are barely keeping the secret, so looping someone else in is a bad idea. On the other hand, Grog is fully in the camp of inviting Kima. He thinks she'd be totally down with the revelation that they get to kill 2 dragons instead of 1, even though they already said they're not going to try to kill Raishan. Maybe he means in the long term. Doesn't really matter. But when it becomes clear that nobody else is convincing anybody else, Grog calls for another vote. And this time, the table is evenly split. Keyleth and Percy and Scanlan say, let's not invite her at all. Vex and Grog say, let's just bring her along. Vax is not there. He's looking for Kynan. Scanlan offers to wipe her memory instead and just completely walk back the invitation to join them for the dragon fight, but when everyone, including Keyleth, says that they do want Kima there, but the issue is about trust, Scanlan changes his vote and says, let's bring her. Man, changing your vote, that kind of reminds me of how there was a huge spike of people Googling, how do you change your vote on November 5th and 6th and 7th of this year, particularly in red states. I wonder what that was about. Probably nothing, I bet it's all fine. But in all seriousness, once Scanlan flips his vote, Grog seems satisfied that they have a majority, which makes it different from the do we trust Raishan vote, where Grog wanted to make sure everyone was on board before they committed to working with her. And I think we could all speculate on the reason or reasons why this vote was different from that vote, but ultimately, we may never know why exactly this party felt a majority was sufficient in this case, and not that one. Because D&D isn't a democracy with strict rules about how you come to a consensus, your group has to figure out their own dynamic, and it might change from campaign to campaign, or even from session to session, or as we saw in this case, from scene to scene. Personally, I would guess that the reason why Travis seemed satisfied once they had a majority is because he just wanted to keep the game moving, rather than continuing to debate the topic endlessly. And perhaps he also felt that because the entire party had just backed up Keyleth in a pretty profound way, that Keyleth would return the favor and respect the group's decision in this case, which he was right about. After the vote, she dropped the subject and they moved on. Meanwhile, Vax meets up with Kynan and he properly apologizes for what he did to him back in episode 23 when he clocked him over the head. He said he had a point to make, but he made sport of Kynan in making it. Great phrasing on that. Kynan also apologizes for, joining up with a sadistic psychopath and trying to kill him. He's already apologized for that, but not a bad idea to apologize a second time. Vax recruits him to help train the other soldiers in the militia, but he also gives him 2 of the 3 daggers that he bought for him back in Amon. He also gives Kynan the Keen Dagger, one of Vax's magical daggers, since, once again, Vax has to make room in his belt for Whisper. He takes Kynan back to Percy's workshop to make sure he knows enough about the guns to train the other soldiers. At this point, Kima returns in full armor. It's a bit awkward since Vox Machina was planning to leave tomorrow and not today, so Kima urges them, can't we just leave today? This is the same thing that Raishan originally proposed. She said, what's the plan? When are we leaving? Let's leave today. I think Matt is trying to get them out the door and get them to Draconia to move the storyline along a little bit. And Vox Machina says, okay, sure, we feel bad that we basically got Kima's hopes up. We could go today. After all, it's not going to make any difference when Raishan kills them in the snow anyway. And Scanlan still has the spells to create the mansion, although he makes it clear that Raishan is not going to sleep in the mansion with them. And, hey, yeah, they said that out loud. And Kima and Kynan are still there. Now, Kynan doesn't have enough context to know what they're talking about, but when Kima hears them talking about Raishan coming with them to Draconia and whether or not she'll be sleeping in the mansion, whoops! Scanlan's about to erase her memory, but then they decide, you know what? Screw it. Let's figure out how she's going to take the news. If she's going to take it badly, we can erase her memory. If she's on board, we're good. Percy takes Kynan out of the room to show him what he wants from the military training, and he listens through the earrings as they talk to Kima, and he keeps counting how much time has passed, since modified memory can only change 10 minutes worth of memory. So he needs to let them know when they've hit 10 minutes so they know their door has closed. So the party lays out the situation. Badly. I mean, even right at the top, they tell her that if she reacts badly, they'll wipe her memories. And a statement like that does not exactly start a conversation off in a good place. She says that if Scanlan casts a spell and messes with her mind, she's gonna hit him in the face. But the scene is tense and stressful, and also very silly, because they're just so bad at this. The party reminds her of Clarota, which is also where her head's at right now, but they insist, no, we're not being as naive this time, because with Clarota, they thought he was legitimately on their side and not going to betray them. Well, not all of them, but some of them. Here, they have no doubts about the fact that Raishan is pure evil and cannot be trusted not to betray them. And eventually they get her to agree to help them and to not say anything to anybody else about their alliance with Raishan. They also specifically don't tell her what Raishan's alter ego is in Whitestone to make sure that Kima doesn't do anything rash. She sort of implies, like, come on, do you think that little of me? But Kima, come on. You know why you have that reputation, right? And so once that's sorted, they agree to go to Draconia tonight. Percy goes to Secret Assume to tell him the new plan, to leave tonight. He also says they've recruited some help, but doesn't say who it is. Probably because he knows that if they do tell Raishan who specifically knows about her, then he could be dooming that person to die in their sleep during the night. He also reminds Raishan not to take the form of Assume on this mission, because that would give away her secret. And then he tells her to find her own way to Draconia.
Fetch me when you're ready.
We'll be leaving on our own. You will have to meet us there. I'm sure getting to Draconia shouldn't be too much of a problem for you.
Then I'd travel with you and your band. That seems like a waste of magic.
It does, but sadly we are trying to keep our own reality quiet. Needs advance. And also, they don't want you around. They don't trust you. I don't trust you.
But if
I
you're going now, it takes me at least 3-4 days of travel over the ocean to get to Draconia.
Surely you can find a faster way. You got here very quickly. You so rarely lie that I'm so fascinated that when you do, I think I'm starting to get your tells, just a bit of them.
Before they leave, Keyleth casts Commune with Nature on the Sun Tree to talk to it and try to figure out more of the lore she's been curious about for a while. I get the sense that this topic landed back on her radar after the discussion of the ziggurats, since she then vanished into her notes for quite a while and very occasionally asked a random question about ley lines, because she knows there are magical ley lines running beneath Whitestone and the Sun Tree. So she wants to know, does the Sun Tree know where they lead? And in the game, the Sun Tree doesn't know. But out of game, the spell Commune with Nature only extends 3 miles. Marisha clarifies she hoped by casting the spell on the Divine Tree, it would essentially enhance the range of the spell. And in defense of Marisha, it seems like this is the kind of thing that Matt used to be a lot more permissive of in their home game, and in the early episodes of the livestream. He's gotten more strict for a lot of reasons, partially due to pressure from viewers, partially because he's just getting more comfortable with the new system and adapting his style to match the new mechanics, and partially because high-level D&D falls apart a lot more easily if you're too flippant with the rules. But also when it comes to negotiating bonus uses for spells or other effects, I do think you're at quite a disadvantage if you're asking after you've already done the thing. If Marisha had asked, will I get some extended range if I cast this spell on the Sun Tree? Matt would have weighed the pros and cons and come to a decision. But because she waited until after she'd cast the spell and he'd given an answer already, now it feels like she's haggling. I don't think that's how Marisha meant it, and she absolutely is not the only player who has done this. But this is advice for any D&D player. You're going to have a lot more success with these types of outside-the-box requests if you can make your pitch for how you're hoping it'll work before you start doing it. Again, we're just seeing the holdover from an old playstyle that's part of why Marisha so seldom asked in advance. And also, this is anecdotal, but from my own experience, it seems like Druid players are almost always the ones who want to push the boundaries of magic in favor of a more soft magic result. But again, if you try to get approval in advance, you are a lot more likely to get it. Otherwise, the GM might feel like you're negotiating. I know the common wisdom is it's better to ask for forgiveness than permission, but in this case, I don't think that's true. Anyway, Keyleth's second question for the tree is, do you know what other place or reality is connected to the spinning orb of death? And no. No, he does not. Third question, does the Sun Tree know if any of the gods have any influence in town besides Pelor? The Sun Tree says, no, even Pelor's presence isn't as strong here as it once was. So, probably doesn't feel like Keyleth got a lot of use out of that spell. The party gathers by the Sun Tree to travel to Draconia, and before they pass through the tree, Scanlan says he is going to go ahead and try to wipe Lady Kima's memory. And he casts the spell, and she saves against it, and as promised, she hits him in the face with her hammer and rolls a natural 20. So, yeah, they travel to Draconia, and immediately, Matt asks for a perception check from Percy. He doesn't roll very well, so he doesn't see anything, but Taliesin knows what the roll was for. He doesn't say it out loud, but it was definitely so he might notice a bug or something that hitched a ride with him through the tree. Essentially, he was going to notice how Raishan traveled with them to Draconia. But then Scanlan creates the mansion and they all go inside. And they haven't seen Raishan or her new form yet, but Scanlan did specifically want her to be completely unable to enter the mansion, so they should be safe tonight. Keyleth scries on Tuma, the leader of the Ravenites. She's fine, she's just asleep in her throne. And Keyleth wants to scry on someplace near the Dragon's Lair so they can have a better sense of any other information they might need to know. But the group just can't decide on a location near the Dragon's Lair that wouldn't also risk the arcane sensor being spotted by an ancient dragon with true sight. we just decide not to risk it. Scanlan and Vax turn invisible and go talk to Tuma, and she's able to give them a location for where they can release the monster the next day. Scanlan and Vax return to the mansion for the night, and thus ends the session. And at the end of the game, Matt mentions that Raishan's title is the Diseased Deceiver. And I've talked about this before when the party first fought Umbrasyl and learned that he was called the Hope Devourer, but it is a bit weird that Matt gives them these nicknames out of game, rather than finding a way to deliver this exposition within the world. I don't think it's a terrible move as a game master, but I do think it's especially weird because Matt doesn't do that with anything else. With just about every other important piece of lore, or even every little bit of flavor, Matt works the title into the story. Even Voragol's nickname, the Frigid Doom, was established in their first discussion with Tuma and the Ravenites, and Thordak's nickname, the Cinder King, was delivered in his victorious villain monologue after he conquered Amon. And so here, Matt is deliberately doing something that is outside the narrative of the game, so his players will have a stronger sense of what to expect from the dragon. And again, I don't think it's bad. I just think it's strange that he's willing to deliver exposition like this out of game, but he won't even tell his players, hey, the Raven Queen meant the lore you got from the second Sphinx. You know the demon's name. The demon's name is Yank. But anyway, we're going to potentially have a chance to see Yank in the next episode, Voragol. That is, assuming Scanlan is successful in casting the spell, because their entire plan hinges upon it. And if it doesn't go well, then things could go very badly. So make sure to come back when we talk about that episode in 2 weeks. But also, next week we're going to do a bonus episode that was commissioned by one of my patrons. We're going to talk about The Night Before Christmas. And man, I remember that one-shot as just being really wild, so I'm very curious to revisit it and see what lessons we can learn from it. And if you want to make sure to catch all of my bonus Critical Role videos when I post them, as well as all my other videos and everything else I've got going on, make sure to subscribe and ring the bell so you get all of my notifications. You can support the channel financially by joining my Patreon or becoming a YouTube member. You can join my community by signing up for my Discord server, and you can catch all of my latest updates by signing up for my newsletter. All those links are in the doobly-doo below. And if you want me to talk about more villains like Raishan and the rest of the Chroma Conclave, I've got good news for you. I put out a video last month about the villain groups from Flea Mortals. It's a great video that has a very normal amount of clips from a 16-year-old Spider-Man cartoon. I mean, the show is 16 years old, not Spider-Man. Well, also probably Spider-Man, actually, come to think of it. You can check that video out right here. It's a real good one. Until next time, play fair and have fun.